Hey y'all, welcome back to the lab. In this video, we are going to be doing a 2024 year in review for HAMY Labs across my builds, my business, and my shares. Okay, so quick overview TLDR. Basically, the high of the year has been my shares have been doing remarkably well, largely driven by video, which has grown by 2x. So thank you if you're watching this today. You are helping to increase that numbers, and we want numbers to go up. On the low side, my builds have been interesting, at least for me to build, but not gaining that much traction in terms of like usership. And we'll go into more about why that is and where that's coming from. And then the seed is, I've been enjoying my recent builds a lot. So a lot more to come in the coming months and years. All right, so first let's start off with shares. There's a lot of sections in here. So again, another overview that's specifically for shares. The high is that YouTube channel is going very well. The low is that my socials game is like super bad, especially in short form video, as we'll talk about in a minute. And then my long form writing, the stuff that I'm reading here is like just kind of stagnant, which is interesting. We'll also dive into that. And then the seed is that, I really like this writing, so I'm going to keep making these shares like this. So, I'm excited about that. So that's something to look forward to. All right, so let's start off with YouTube. So here's some high-level stats. So this year I released about 120 videos, which sounds like a lot, and I guess it is a lot. But really it comes out to about 3 times per week. And I usually will just like sit down, every few days, and I have an essay I want to write. I write the essay and I turn that into a video. And that's what we get here on the channel. Views is up to 317,000 for the year, which is about 4 times as much as 2023's 67,000. And then for subs, we're up to 4,100, which is about 2x 2023's 1,800. I used to do percents and stuff, but I just think the multiples is just easier. And then you basically get the same information out there. So we're just going with x's. So yeah, the channel here grown viewership by about 4x versus 2023, and I think this is mostly attributable to leaning into a few exploding topics that got outsized viewership, so got more people that like don't subscribe to me to watch this stuff, and partially because I just posted a lot more. I think last year I posted like 60 times, so here I posted like 120. So I think like the magnitude of the shares hasn't gone up that much. It's just I'm just doing more of them. Now I credit the increased posting itself to a new perspective on writing that I got from going through the Ship 30 for 30 course, which is like a 30-day writing course, one of those you try to do one thing a day kind of thing. And it really emphasizes quantity as a means of moving towards quality, which I think is not super intuitive, but I did find it refreshing to share more smaller things. It kind of lowers the bar to entry, and I think in the past few years I've gone more towards the idea of like it's not worth spending so much time trying to be like perfect at something, because you will just not, like, you are not equipped to do a thing perfectly, really. And instead, a better way to think about it is like, I'm going to need to try this a bunch of times. Every time I'm going to try to make it better, but just know that like until you've done it at least 100 times, it probably will not be very good. You're just not equipped to do it very good because you haven't iterated over it 100 times. And so that's what I've been doing. And then I basically turn this post, I call them like atomic essays, into a quick video doing what I'm doing here, which is like reading them off, adding some commentary, some background and stuff, but mostly it is the post itself that's turning into the video. Another cool thing this year from YouTube is that this is my first year that my YouTube has been monetized, and I've been doing this thing for like 4 or 5 years. And while it cannot and probably won't ever be able to pay like all my bills given the trajectory we're on, it certainly helps pay for my coffee and covering my hosting costs, which has made me feel more comfortable spending more money on, experiments with AI or throwaway projects or dumb little websites that I enjoy and want to share with people, but like just cannot really be monetizable. For more on the money side, we'll dive into that in the business section later. And we can talk about, how YouTube has been contributing to that. Now, overall, I've been very happy with where my shares are at, and I'm enjoying where my YouTube channel is going. I don't think I'll ever be a full-time creator or garner a like huge following, but I do find the shares to be useful for me, and I've connected with a lot of new people and ideas online through it that I wouldn't have otherwise. This kind of feels like a hobby I can sustain and that I'm actually excited to pursue for like the next 10 years. I've basically been writing online for 10 years now, which is like crazy to say. But given the look back there, I don't regret it at all, and something I think I would enjoy doing for 10 more years. So I think it's still something worth investing in. And so I'll continue to do that next year. And I pulled out my top 10 videos in 2024. I think it's probably boring for me to just like read off their names. So they're all linked here if you want to go through them, and they're all both posts and videos, and so you can consume them in whatever form you'd like. For examples of some of these like exploding topics that I was covering, HTMX was one of these, although this is the only one that actually seemed to, quote unquote, explode. Postgres over everything is another one that exploded, although it was really short-lived. And then a few news items like, Tesla's Optimus robots and Amazon's return to office did pretty well, but also very short-lived. So I'm still playing around with these, but clearly they worked pretty well if, I've got a few of them in the top 10. Okay, video games. In that list of top 10s, I've purposely omitted 2 videos that otherwise would have appeared in the top 10 there. And these are like small guides on video games that I enjoy making. Like I create my own guides for video games. I have my own systems for these things. And I have been sharing them on this channel because I didn't really have another place to put them, but they don't really fit with like the rest of the content. This channel's kind of more about like programming, building side projects, maybe some gadgets that I'm using there, but it's like not really video games. And I've purposely done that because video games is like, I don't know, a little less like pithy. It's like less, I don't want to say healthy, but less like productive. And I don't want to mix these two because like I enjoy video games. I want it to be like a more fun channel. And this stuff I think is more like information based. But anyway, I did post some of these, and they did like really well, but I don't want them on this channel because I just don't want to mix the video games with the other content. And so that said, I've still noticed a trend where some of these video game guides do like far better than other guides that I might on this channel that like require much more thought to put together. And so my hypothesis for this is that video games are just a much larger market and more people are willing to like watch a little video on this or something. And they also tend to like solve more mainstream problems. Like everyone that plays Fallout 4 is probably going to want to find a way to get infinite water because it's just a key resource in the game. Versus my tech posts, which are like how to do this one specific thing with F#, like the audience size there is just like much different, like probably 100, 1,000 times different. And so I think there's something here, and I'm basically experimenting with this stuff because I think there's an opportunity, but I don't think it should be on my main channel. And so I've created this new YouTube channel, Hammy Games, where I've been posting some little walkthroughs to just kind of gauge the water, see if like this starts working out or anything like that. And if so, and people want more guides on YouTube stuff, then I'll start doing that a bit more. But yeah, I feel like YouTube channels don't do so well if you have like too many types of content in the same place. And I think video games and like coding is something that often goes together domain wise, but like if you start seeing them on the same feed, you might unfollow because you don't want both of those. I might be overthinking this, but anyway, that's the current thought, and I am experimenting with that and probably will continue to do so going forward. All right, onto the blog. So the blog is this. I'm reading this. All my posts basically start on the blog and then I turn them into a YouTube video. That's kind of how it goes. And basically got 54,000 views in 2024, which is about the same as 2023's 52,000. And my blog posts remain the core of my shares. I love writing, and I think it's probably a hobby I'll continue throughout my life, regardless of whether or not people read it. I've been writing for 10 plus years now. The YouTube thing didn't really start till like 5 years ago, and I really didn't actually take it very seriously until like 2 years ago. But writing is something that has been pretty constant as a hobby of mine. And I think it's good because, my writing really doesn't reach that many people, especially compared to the videos, which are literally the exact same content. And I think there's like a few reasons for this. I write on my own site, which has pretty low distribution. They basically say nowadays you shouldn't be writing on your own site because there's like no distribution. You should just like lean into a platform like Medium or something, which is fine, but I like writing on my site. I like having the link go to my own domain. I think my topics are also very niche, which doesn't really explain the, video versus writing thing, but I think overall, in general, compared to like other topics, my topics are like extremely niche. Most people that know me and decide to follow me, they like follow me because they know me, but they like, I have no idea what you're talking about in any of your videos. So that is just the way it is. I think another thing is I write long form, and most people like don't want to read long form. I'm a big reader. I love reading long form, but like what I found is most people don't want to do that, and I think people are more willing to listen to long form because they're not doing the effort of reading it, and that's why the videos do better, but, just a hypothesis. And then I've been resharing a lot on other platforms, but I just don't think my, like, text reshares, or really any of my reshares, are very, like, viral. I don't know why that is, but I just don't think they're viral, and so they just don't get more, reshares and engagement out from the algorithm. And largely, I think this is fine. Like, it doesn't matter to me that much. Most of my writing here is a public journal. I do this to help me process my own thoughts. I save these thoughts in a way that I can access it later. It's really nice that it has a link and it's public, because then I can share it with others the next time, this inevitably comes up, or I want to refer to what I was thinking at that time. And I also think it forces me to refine my thoughts in such a way that it might make sense to others. I think a lot of people say like writing is knowing what you think, and I think that's true, but if you only write it for yourself, sometimes you lie to yourself even in writing. So making it public, it kind of forces you to be like, okay, what would someone actually think if I wrote this, and kind of like keep yourself honest a bit that like this doesn't make sense, it's a fallacy or whatever, which I think internally helps me make more sense of it myself, because I actually went through the time to refine it. And so if I'm honest, I would keep writing even if no one read it, and I do that a lot nowadays anyway in my personal notes and journals, but I do think it is nice to have this writing read and engage with, and I've gotten a ton of good feedback on my systems and solutions from the internet, and topics ranging from F# to web dev to video game tactics, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't like that. Especially for F#, like I really like this, but I don't use it professionally, and so I never get PRs from anyone. But sharing this stuff publicly is like the only way that I find new ways to do this, or like better ways to solve an advent code or something like that. So it's been really helpful over the past few years. And this is one of the big reasons why I've been publishing more frequently this year and turning many of those posts into videos. It really gets more engagement that way, and so I connect with more people and they give me more comments on how I can do things better. But you will notice that most of my videos are really just me reading my posts like this one, and that's because I really like writing and I enjoy the reading of it now, but I'm not really a big fan of video making or editing or doing any of that stuff, so I kind of steer clear of that and any kind of videos that require that. Now, this definitely limits the audience that would enjoy these videos, but I think it aligns better with what I want to do with my time long term, so is better overall. And so again, if I had to like guess why my shares aren't getting read more, it's probably a few things. Topics are way too niche. The reshares don't play well with the algorithm. My shorts are not that good, as we'll talk about in a second. And my tweets and like text-based shares are just not that viral. They're kind of like informational, but they're not like, I don't know, causing drama. And then third, my info and presentation is just like a bit dry. Like there's no humor here. There's not that much personality. I'm not going to win any like influencer personality rewards. And so there's no like built-in like virality there. It really is just based on the information, and the information I pick via my topics is just like not the hottest, most dramatic thing. And to take it one step further, the only one I'm really willing to change is the topics, but even then I don't want to make things I'm not interested in, so largely my upside is capped. Like you probably won't find me making a video on how to build like a Golang backend, because like I just don't really care about that right now. And I think that's okay. I was going to write the thing anyway, so I might as well share it, regardless of what the, outcome is. And of course, let me know if you have other ideas of how to increase readership or other things I could be missing or doing. I'll consider implementing them because, better overall. For top 10 posts from this year, I've got all of these linked here. They're mostly the same as YouTube, although there's a few that have different rankings. So you can come through and click through them in the link below. All right, so those are the two biggest sections, and these should go a little bit faster here as they're much smaller. So the first other thing to talk about is my HAMINIONS membership. We're up to 11 members now, which is 5 additionals versus 2023. For those that don't know, my HAMINIONS membership is how people can support me with their money. In return, I get to keep building projects that lose money because you're helping me support those hosting costs. You also get access to my HAMY Labs example repo, which has grown to dozens of projects, mostly F# this year because, that's what I've been building with. And you get some discounts on my products, which is mostly Cloud Seed, which has a 50% off discount code. So you basically make your money back as soon as you join. On my side, it's a nice way to just see that people want more content like this and they're willing to like put their money where their mouth is. And it's really encouraging to me to build more random projects so that I can extract the code, make it generic, and then add it to my example repo because people clearly want more of that. I really don't have many plans to change the membership going forward. I think I'll probably just build more projects, share that code out, and hopefully have some more products that are worth giving discounts for. So just like more of the same. But I really appreciate all the current HAMINIONS members. You really help me and encourage me to keep, making more stuff like this. All right, next section is HAMY Labs Pod. So if you don't know, I have a podcast. It's called the HAMY Labs Pod. It should be available wherever you get podcasts, and you can also just like listen to some samples here on this website. Now, I created it because I reflected on my personal consumption, and I realized that like mostly I consume via blog posts. Like I like reading, social posts, so like things that I see on Twitter, maybe some newsletters, and then podcasts, because I go to the gym every morning and I listen to a podcast every morning, and I probably consume, like, podcasts is almost definitely the most time spent on a platform or mode of consumption. And then YouTube, like I watch YouTube videos, but really only every day or so. And I only get through like 1 to 3 and usually shorter ones. And what this meant is that even I, who's creating this content, may or may not actually watch all the videos that I put out. And so I decided to create a podcast to see if there were other listeners that were like me out there who enjoyed the listening to only content that maybe were missing, the videos that I was making. You can read more about this and why I'm starting a podcast as a software engineer. That said, I'll be honest, it's really not going that well. I didn't really have a listenership goal in mind, but 100 listens over a few months seems pretty low, especially compared to the performance of the exact same content in written and video form. Because again, all these posts, they start as a blog post and then I turn them into a video. And then basically for the podcast, I'm just going and uploading the video itself so that it pulls out the audio. And that's the podcast. It's basically this video right here that you're watching. And I think there's a few reasons the podcast is just like not doing that well. The first is that, it's low awareness. Like I don't really mention it very much because I think, the writing and the YouTube is doing well and those are like my more primary sources. And so the podcast is just kind of out there. I link to it in a few places, but I don't really talk about it that much. Second is it has like meh production value. Like the podcasts are really just my videos re-uploaded. And I think production-wise are maybe not that great. Like I think there's some things you would do in a podcast that I don't have to do in a video, which is like introduce things like what am I reading or something like that. And really given how many people actually listen to the podcast, it probably makes sense for me to still make this as like video first, which is fine. And then the last one is that, again, my topics are very niche, okay? Which means that there's just going to be less listeners overall and less people who might discover it. And a lot of this stuff is like coding stuff where you're probably going to want to be able to read the code, which I think just lends itself better to a visual format, which is going to be like my writing and my videos. So I think those are a few of them. Also, I think podcasts are just like super saturated. Like even me personally, I don't find new podcasts to listen to very often. And when I do, it's almost always via recommendation. So it's going to be like a already established popular podcast. Like I'm not really going to find like a podcast that has like no listeners because I would never discover that in any way, which I think is just an attribute of the current podcasting ecosystem. And I don't know if there's anything to do about that. Now the pod is still new. So, small N, I haven't made that many of them. People don't know about it. So I can't really draw a conclusion yet. And so I'm probably going to run it for at least another year because it really doesn't take that much more effort than these videos. So might as well and just see what happens. The only thing I'm really planning to do differently in the future here is to write about more mainstream topics, which will flow into the video and then to the podcast and kind of see how that goes. And just kind of watch the numbers and see what's what. But probably not going to do anything like a special to improve the podcast because the data, the numbers just aren't there to support that. All right, next bucket is HAMY LABS socials. So I've been posting a lot on my socials this year, enough that people I know IRL have commented on it for better and for worse. The socials are growing, but not by that much, which is fine, but I think it's another sign that full-time creators likely not in my future. One of the interesting things from Ship 30 is they were mentioning like, blogs are dead. You should lean into a platform and get viewership on a platform and bring those from platform to platform because that's where people are spending so much time, which I think makes a lot of sense. But a lot of my posts just like don't do well on the platform. They're kind of like just informational, very niche, just not viral. And so they just don't play well on the platform, which means that they're just probably not doing that well in like the current metagame of content viewership. And I think that's probably necessary if you want to be a full-time creator because I think the space is getting more competitive. And so, yeah, given the current trajectory of things, like that's probably not what's going to happen here. Now, one big thing I did try this year was to lean into short form video like YouTube Shorts, TikTok, and IG, as I was seeing some big successes from other people in the indie hacker and coding communities. But after about 6 months of doing this and like, I don't know, dozens of videos, I decided it wasn't really worth it. I found that even though the short videos were low effort, like I used an AI to make them, Opus Pro is pretty good. The videos came out pretty good. It's pretty low effort on my part. But it was still effort to do it. Like I still had to upload the video. This took more time after I'd actually finished a thing. And so it was more annoying to make and people just like weren't liking them. Like a lot of my shorts, they have like a few hundred views and like a few likes on them, but they're just not like that good. And the followers weren't really coming. So it felt like people didn't care enough to actually follow. And so it just seemed like a little bit of annoyance for just like very little impact. So just, not really a net profit there. And I think the problem with the shorts is that they are pretty low effort. They're really just cut up bits of my long form pieces like this. And this means that they just aren't great videos. And coupled with the niche topics, there's just very low surface area of engagement here. And so I just don't think it's fitting the meta of shorts, which is like fine because I don't really want to make things that are just for shorts because, again, this doesn't really fit with the things that I enjoy doing. But that said, I do think other creators that like are leaning more into personality and these kind of like short, like pithy things, they will probably see a lot more success on this. Just I probably won't going forward. And so for the most part, I'm moving off the short form video content and channels and just going to focus on text-based shares, which seem to be doing better, at least on text-based platforms like Twitter, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn. This does kind of seem like an old person move. It's like, I don't want to lean into the new technology or paradigm and do this. And so like, I don't know, maybe this won't work for like a long time, but still, it's a content that I enjoy making more. So for now, we'll do that. Maybe eventually the AIs will get so good I don't even have to upload the video. It'll just figure it out itself. And at that point, it'll be like no net cost. But currently where the tools are today seems like a net negative for me. Okay, the HAMNIVERSE Newsletter. So this is my Substack newsletter, has 99 subs, which is about 2x versus 2023's 40. And I say this is like less a newsletter and more just a notification that like, hey, I released my monthly release notes. And so I think it's cool people want a notification, but otherwise not very interesting. But I guess, if you do want updates when I upload summaries like this, join the HAMNIVERSE and you'll get it about monthly when I actually create them. Okay, so that's shares, pretty long section, but now let's go into builds. This used to be called tech, but I'm more into builds because, I'm just trying to build stuff. All right, so overview is the high is I built some fun stuff, as we'll talk about in a second. The low, none of it really has that much traction. So like I enjoyed it. Do other people enjoy using it? Doesn't seem like it. And the seed is like, hey, I want to build more fun stuff. I think that was fun. And ideally a few more things that get a bit more traction. So here's some notable projects. I think 1 million checkboxes is my favorite because anyone can access it. You can play with it directly. It's kind of self-contained, and basically it's just 1 million checkboxes shared by the internet, so you click it, everyone else sees it. The next is Cloud Compare. Cloud pricing is confusing, often overpriced, and hard to compare, so I'm trying to fix that. I think this is the most useful one I put together, even though it's really just a static website. And it's gotten some traction, but like it hasn't won any SEO battles, and so it's really not getting recurring traction. I think I will probably continue to hack on this in the future because it has been very useful for me personally, especially like sharing information out to people and making it more digestible and like kind of the state of cloud. But I don't think it's quite there yet to actually solve the problem fully. The next one is full stack projects, which is basically like sometimes I want to build something, but I don't know what to build. So having a list of items or ideas that I could build that might have been pre-vetted and you could sort by this might help. Ultimately, it didn't, though I don't think the idea is bad. I think it's probably that implementation is bad. But I did learn how to generate 100,000 web pages with AI, so that was good. And then the downside is like, how good are those 100,000 pages? And the answer is like, not that good. Another project is Option Scanner. And basically like, every 3 months, I think I can beat the stock market by finding great options plays or like stocks or something like that. And I basically built a scanner so that I could automate this process and ultimately remind myself I can't faster and with less effort. So sometimes I'm like, oh, if I can find a thing like this, it's a big discount, you get like good ROI, you do this, you do that. If I can find those stocks, it'll be a great deal. And I used to just like do this math manually and like look at stocks I wanted. This one basically just automates that, so it's done in 30 seconds. So I can like, stop trying to beat the stock market and get on with my life. Travel Map is another one, which is basically just my first attempt at combining HTMX and Alpine. And I'm really glad I built it. I wanted to be able to visualize my travels easier on a map, which is something I've done in like years past using various technologies and various attempts at doing this. And I think it's a cool idea. I think it's a problem people have and would like to use a tool like this, but I think this tool in particular needs some improvements to actually be useful. And I just don't know if I'm going to invest in actually doing those. The final notable project is CloudSeed, which is my F# project boilerplate for web apps. And it continues to chug along. I released several small improvements this year, just like refactors and things to make things easier to use and understand, but nothing that big. And it is still how I start most of my web projects, so I'm getting a lot of value out of it. I still get a few sales every year. People seem to enjoy it. And so it seems fine. I don't really know where to bring this project F# again yet. Just not many people are trying to build web. I might do some improvements on it, but gotta always balance the complexity of like, people are just doing this to set up a web project quickly. The more features I add, the more bloated it gets. So that becomes less simple and harder to get up quickly. So there's a balance here. I don't know, but I still use it. And so it still lives on. These are just a few of the projects I think we're talking about. For more projects, you can check it out here. All right, on to business. So the overview of this section is basically that The high is that business is not stressing me out so much, probably because I have a job and I'm making money in other ways, and so I don't have to feel anxious that I need to like succeed in one of these projects. The low, of course, is that I'm not making that much money from builds, so if I didn't have a job, I probably would be pretty stressed out about this. And then the seed is that, hey, I'm going to keep building stuff. Maybe I'll eventually build something that actually makes money. And so I ranted at length last year about how trying to build projects that worked as businesses was sucking the joy out of building things for me. That is still true. I think if you're only doing these things to like build businesses, you're not following your interests, like it quickly becomes a recipe for burnout, which is something I think I was facing back then. And I think that's still true, but here I am still trying to build little projects that make some money. So, I don't know if I've learned anything. That said, I do think I found a slightly better balance with these things, as I'm certainly enjoying the build process today and the past few months than I did back then. And the only things I can think of different are basically, first I got a job, which is the big one, which helps remove some of the expectations on each project, the need for it to succeed, which allows me to just build more stupid projects that I actually enjoy. Second is that I leaned into projects that are actually interesting to me, so not just looking at it from like an impact or money standpoint. So I'm actually enjoying this as more of a hobby. And also found out that my shares are like outperforming most of my projects anyway. And so as long as I was like writing about it, which I enjoy anyway as a hobby, it was probably good to go. So again, lowering the kind of barrier to entry, the expectations that needed to be fulfilled for these builds. More content with them, having more fun with them overall. That said, I do think in an ideal world, like my projects would bring me both joy and be self-sustaining. I'm of course willing to pay out for my hobbies that I like, but if they can pay for themselves, maybe make them. Now, I think this is probably a logical fallacy of some sort and the source of a lot of internal strife between like hobbies and business and work and stuff. But again, here we are. So that's my current leading hypothesis, I guess. And now onto the revenue breakdown. So here is a chart. I can't tell if you're going to be able to read this or not. Let's zoom in a little bit and I'll talk over it. And so the biggest piece of the pie is going to be my YouTube, which brought in about 67% of my revenue, which is like pretty astounding to me considering I wasn't making any money from YouTube previously because we didn't hit the requirements to get monetized. That's like by far the biggest chunk. The next big chunk is HAMINIONS, which, are my community members that mostly come from my blogs and YouTubes. The next biggest chunk is CloudSeed, which is the only project on here that is actually making money in a line item. And then we have affiliates at 4%. These are affiliates mostly via my blog, but a few links do make it into the YouTube videos as well. And then finally, my blog itself at 2%, which is all from like the ads that show up in the little corner of things. So not much overall. And the breakdowns here are in text as well to just make it more clear. So clearly my shares are the dominant source of revenue here, just like they were last year. CloudSeed remains my only build that really makes money, likely because it's the only one solving a real and present problem. Like if you want to build F#, you want to build a web app, you want a place to start, like you really just got to go through blogs and stuff. There's like a few GitHub repos around that have stuff. I have my example projects. I have a few still public GitHub repos, but still I think it's a hard sell. And so when people find CloudSeed and they're like, oh, there's some videos on this, there's some like guides, they like that. And so I think there's something to be learned here about like actually solving a real problem real people have. But I don't know if I've learned it yet. Next year going forward, I'd definitely like to try to get at least one more project in the board and see what happens. I usually set like, grandiose goals of like launching this many things or whatever. But honestly, at this point, I'm just like, can we get one more thing on the board and increase the revenue of the existing ones? That's probably good enough for me. Next. So yeah, that's 2024 wrapped. Thanks for supporting me through another year of building projects in tiny little niches and a bunch of like dumb websites that nobody wanted. If you've got any suggestions for how to do better next year, please drop me a line. I'd love to hear from you. And of course, if you want to get updates from me, connect with one of my socials, and that's probably the best way to message me anyway, because I check those daily. If you like this post, you might also like one of these posts that I think deserved more readership and did not end up in the top 10 this year. The first is how I generated 100,000 web pages for my side project using AI. The next is how software engineers actually use AI to improve productivity. And finally, why you should use snake case instead of camel case for variable names. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.